Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television is sponsored by Nutrien. Nutrien, feeding the future.
Hello everyone and welcome to Perspective. This is a public affairs presentation of Florida Gateway College. My name is Mike McKee, and on the program tonight we have photographers, and they all are involved in the Alligator Lake photo contest, which is going on in conjunction with the Alligator Lake Festival. We have John Middleton, who is a founding organizer of the photo contest. We have John Stokes, who is an amateur photographer whose work has been seen in Lake City Reporter and other publications. And we have Rob Wolf, who is also an amateur photographer. His work is seen in, I guess, Live Oak newspapers, Brantford newspapers. He's also a member of the Brantford Camera Club. We're going to talk about all things photography and the photo contest going on in conjunction with the Alligator Lake Festival. We'll do that when we come back. Don't go away.
It's a short ride from your neighborhood to your naturehood. To find a neighborhood park or green space near you, visit discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back to Perspective here on Florida Gateway College Television. John Middleton, John Stokes, and Rob Wolf are all amateur photographers. They love to take photographs, and they are here with us to talk about photography in general, but in specific terms, the Alligator Lake Photo Contest, which is going on now until the festival in April. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, first of all, I guess I want to ask you, what got you interested in photography? Because you all are pretty darn good.
Well, I can't speak for the others. I started as a child. My grandmother gave me a Brownie camera when I was 9 years old. And
now, is that the one where you look down into it?
No, this one actually had the eye-level viewfinder. It was one of the later Brownies, a 1960 version Brownie, and that really got me hooked. And I've had a camera in hand ever since.
Now, John Stokes has been doing photography for a very long time. I mean, what has it been, 30, 40 years?
Oh, yes, approaching 50. Hate to say.
So talk about you got interested, how? What was it that because I know when you got started, you actually had film and you had to develop film, which is something young people have no idea about photography.
That's correct. Well, I started out like at age 8. My mama put me into art painting classes, and so I always had a bend for the artistic leaning. So in high school, I purchased my first Yashica 35 millimeter film camera for like $25 from my physics teacher, and fortunately I had access to the high school lab, and I was able to start out in black and white with a telephoto lens. But that's basically my start, was in high school through my physics teacher.
Now, Rob, you worked at Potash, which is now Nutrien,
right,
and you were a photographer there as well. But how did you get started?
I was terribly interested in art and photography, but wasn't a great artist, so I decided I'd concentrate on photography. At about age 16, I did my first wedding, and I shot for the high school and using a press camera, one of the big press cameras with a big bulb, and it was fun. And the negatives were huge, and the images were incredible. So I've been shooting probably 45 years plus. I attended Gateway College here, and I was on the annual staff, and I was also a photographer here, and actually was in the lab quite a bit when I wasn't in class.
Yeah, and up until just recently, when Fran Rossi retired from the college, we had a working darkroom, and I don't know whether they still do that, but they taught students how to take a photograph, and then there was a processing thing that you had to go through using certain chemicals, and you could expose it more or less depending on what.
Exactly.
But I mean, talk about that, John. When you take that first good picture, is that what hooks you on being a photographer?
For me, the entire process hooked me. As both of these other fellows just mentioned, I was on the annual newspaper staff at the competing college in Madison, Florida.
North Florida.
And, North Florida Community College, North Florida Junior College back in the day. And likewise, spent a lot of time in the darkroom. And you get hooked by that entire process. It's not unlike the process today. In those days, you were in a dark room and you were using dangerous chemicals and literally using light or shielding light to dodge and burn areas of your print. Today, you do that on a computer, but much of the basic processing we do in Lightroom or Photoshop is analogous to the work that we began with on film and in a dark room.
Now, guys, and anyone can answer this, there was a lot of patience with photography back in the day with black and white, because when you're right now, when you take a photograph, you can look at it on your screen on your camera, or your phone, or whatever device you're using. Back in the day, you didn't know if you were shooting a basketball game or a football game. You had no idea whether you got a good shot or not. How much patience? How much of that patience was taught to you because you were a photographer? Anyone can answer.
There is nothing like the anxiety in that gap between the critical event that you have photographed and waiting for hopefully some results. It definitely demands patience and also demands some control of your own anxiety.
Well, and John, I know you've shot a lot of sports photography when you worked for the Reporter way back when we were all a lot younger. But talk about the speeds. You had to set the amount of light that was coming into the. I hate to say it, but it's so automatic now.
Yes.
The camera does everything for you. I guess they say it's stupid proof now. But talk about the speeds that film, because there were different speeds for different types of photography.
Certainly.
Talk a little bit about that.
Well, first off, that the angst of waiting was offset somewhat by bracketing what we call every shot. I would try to take at least 3 different exposures, dark, what I would consider the proper exposure, and then light. And that way you knew you had a parameter to go by that you would hopefully get the right shot. But then for that decisive shot, back in the day, we just had to learn a shutter speed. The faster your shutter speed, the speed of the lens, the higher you were, the action was stopped. The slower the speed, then you would get blur. And then you could adjust with ratios between your f-stop, which is the opening in your lens, from your shutter speed, the duration that it stayed open, that you would get the right ratio. And more times than not, by taking the more photos you took, you just learned that you could probably get 125 speed at 2.8 with your opening of your lens to stop motion like inside a gymnasium at night. But there were other factors too, but mainly you just learn through the little cheat sheet on the back of the film box that if you set it here, you would pretty much get a good shot exposure.
Well, and don't get me wrong, there's an automatic on all cameras. I know we've got a Nikon that we use, but there also, you can set it to what you want to do. If you're going to do photography at dusk, you can set the aperture and the speed of what you're taking. But again, it's so neat to be able to see you've taken a good shot. Yeah. The last thing, when you're taking a picture of, and Rob, you know this, when you're taking a wedding shot, in the old days, you didn't know whether the bride had her eyes closed or not, and so you didn't know whether. So you took a lot of photographs. Talk about that. Again.
I've done weddings before, and I traditionally carry 3 cameras with me, and that sounds insane. 2 or 3 flashes, 3 cameras, and I've actually been at a wedding and had to manually rewind the film, and before the bride turned around and came down the aisle. And then sometimes I've had the first camera, something happened to it, went to the second camera, something happened to it. I'm on my third camera in the middle of a wedding, like, oh crap, you know. So you have to you know, be prepared, you know, carry lots of film, lots of batteries. I was at a wedding Saturday with digital camera, and my batteries and the flash actually used them up, and then the camera battery actually was used up, and that's never happened before. I took 1,173 pictures in 8 hours, so it's a different world with digital.
Absolutely. Well, okay, say I mean, again, everybody's got a camera. If you've got a cell phone, you've got a camera. What would you suggest to people who may think this would be a neat hobby? There are groups that you're a member of the Brantford Camera Club. What would you say to someone that may not think they have any talent with regard to getting involved in a club or getting involved taking photographs and maybe entering them in contests? John?
Well, I think you really hit an important point there. If you're interested in photography, one of the best things you can do is to meet other photographers. The Brantford Camera Club is a great opportunity to do that. There are no fees. It's a wide-ranging group. There are people who are just picking up a camera for the first time, and there are people who've been actively involved in photography for decades. So it's a real helpful environment. Go on some of the shoots. We almost every month have some sort of activity where photographers go somewhere to an event or to a natural area like Alligator Lake, and you learn side by side with people more experienced in that particular area of photography. I do a lot of wildlife and outdoors photography. Others do the tractor shows and the lusty battlefield. So working with people who are experienced in those kinds of photography is the best way to learn.
We have in town, we have a place called the Gateway Art Gallery, and we've had those folks on the program before to tout the different art forms that they display. Is that something, John? I know that I think you've shown at the gallery as well as in some of the shows. Would it be good for someone to say, let me go take some pictures and then enter something just to get your feet wet?
Oh yeah, there's nothing better than to have the reward, you know. But the main thing is, even if you never get rewarded, I mean, I went how long with before I won overall grand prize. I've been taking photos forever, but that didn't stop me, you know. It was more the passion of taking the image and photography that drove me, not so much contests. But a great way to learn is through the Gateway Gallery. They do offer classes there as well in cell phone photography. But in addition to that, they have, just by looking at other works that photographers are doing, it helps you learn composition, helps you learn, you know, how they saw the image in it. I'm always looking at images of other photographers. It helps me greatly. And don't let the fact that you don't have a great camera deter you either. I mean, I always dreamed, I want a Nikon, you know, but I couldn't afford a Nikon. But I didn't let that stop me, and don't let that stop you either. I mean, shoot with what you have. I mean, just get over that.
And again, I look at, you're driving in your car, and you look at the sunrise, and you see, that's a great picture. And do you do that? I mean, do all of you say, hey, wow, this is pretty neat, and just stop? You get out of the car?
Constantly,
Yeah.
constantly.
Because you never know when there's going to be a good shot. How do you know when there's a good shot? Is it just something in you that says that's pretty, or that's really nice looking, or what, John? What?
Well, I believe that there's always a good shot. There's a good shot for you as a photographer when whatever it is catches your eye, it catches your spirit. I really believe as Rob was saying, there can be a day when I do 1,500 exposures at Alligator Lake or at St. Mark's National Wildlife Refuge. Out of that 1,500, there'll be 1 or 2 times where I can feel my heart connecting with the subject.
Right.
And when I find that moment of awe, I've got a great photograph. Now, you may not agree, no one else may ever award it anything, but that becomes a photograph that's meaningful. That becomes a photograph that communicates. So yeah, you have your cell phone all the time. They are high quality cameras. But remember, it's not a camera that makes a photograph, it's a photographer. It's your ability for your eye and your heart to connect with what's beautiful in the world.
You know, I it's great because I'm a photographer, I'm a videographer. That's what I've been doing for probably as long as you guys. But John Moran, who was an award-winning photographer for the Gainesville Sun, and his works are legendary. I'll never forget, he was working for the Gainesville Sun, and he came up to cover the air show. And you know, you look at John, and he's going to take pictures of the Thunderbirds. Well, the Thunderbirds landed, and so John goes on the back of his truck and he pulls out a 15-foot ladder, and he shoots a picture from up above the cockpit of the pilot in there. I never would have thought to do that, but perspective, and this is what the show is called. John, talk about perspective and you know, maybe getting down on the ground to shoot a snail or and we're going to see some photographs here shortly.
Well, John Moran, that's a holy name.
Well, yeah.
But he had the foresight to come up here during the snowstorm of 1986 and photograph Falling Creek covered in snow. And it's one of those things you said, how in the world, why didn't we think of that? We live here. But he knew. And yes, you try to sway from the ordinary. Just don't stand and take your photo like this. I mean, your composition could be much more improved by going low, going closer. Always seek to, go from this right here.
Yeah.
Try to vary that, and it will improve your photographs. Just by moving in can greatly improve.
But John, that can get you in trouble, Rob, if you're too close. Yeah. I've had people
Too much detail.
Yeah, people telling me, "Ooh, that's too close." I could see your lunch in your teeth there. So, but so it all depends. You know, a lot. Do you guys, when you're shooting individuals, do you get permission, or do you just take the photograph and get forgiveness after the photograph is taken?
I'm usually on assignment. Like I do headshots for Teacher of the Year and the Chamber and the Educational Foundation and the Swanee Valley Co-op, and so sometimes I shoot studio lights, and so everything's all preset, and I just show up and shoot the picture. Yeah,
guys, do you get forgiveness a lot of times before you? I mean, because sometimes people don't want to be photographed, even in places where you're at a festival or something. Yeah. People don't like that.
You should never photograph anyone who for instance, is Amish and may have a religious objection. I carry, if I am in the setting where I might photograph people, I always have some releases with me. I shoot first and ask later if I believe I have an image that I might use. But you only need a release if you're going to use the image commercially. I'm an amateur, so that's not a big problem for me. Birds and butterflies never complain.
Well, and I'm going to switch gears here and talk about one of the contests that anyone can participate in. And John, you were here, like you said, 2 years ago, talking about the Alligator Lake Festival with Jackie Sulik, and you were thinking about this. Here is some drone footage of Alligator Lake that not many people get a chance to see.
Yes.
You see how beautiful it is. It's kind of full right now. I've seen times when that lake is not quite that overflowing. But there are trails that you can walk along. In fact, I think that's the trail on the right.
Yes, you can see on the right and in the center, there's the dike that goes all the way around, and you can see the central dike. All of those were water control from the previous landowner who used it as farmland. It's a tremendous environmental resource and a tremendous recreational resource, hence the Alligator Lake Spring Festival that Four Rivers Audubon Society sponsors.
Now would you consider this, and the guys who live here, kind of a hidden gem of Columbia County?
Absolutely. I think there are communities everywhere in the United States that would love to have such a marvelous resource right in town, and it is really underutilized. On a weekend, of course, you'll see a lot of people, but I was there yesterday doing some of my own photography. And I don't think I saw but 4 other people using the park yesterday. And it's right there. It's just a beautiful place, and you should enjoy it. So one of the reasons that we organized the photo contest is to help communicate to the people of Columbia County and the entire North Central Florida region of what a great resource Alligator Lake is.
Let's take a look at some. This is something you would see it. This was taken at
Absolutely.
Alligator Lake.
This was the best bird photograph awarded in last year's photo contest. The photo is by Georgia Schmitz. These are American white pelicans. They are the 2nd largest by wingspan of all the North American birds. Their wingspan is about 8 feet. They're an enormous bird, a heavy bird.
And
they
I
spend the winters
I
here.
can't believe they're in Lake City. I mean, you would think pelicans, the ones that are on the
Ocean,
coast,
yeah. Coast.
eating fish out of the bay, but that's really neat.
Yeah, white pelicans are cooperative feeders primarily on freshwater areas. Large groups of them will actually feed in a line, forcing schools of fish to concentrate, and they harvest heavily that way.
And let's take a look at some more photographs. Now that, but is that's a cypress root?
That was on the canal trail. That is one of the trail that goes out and comes back about like a mile, and that was a cypress root along the trail. It's like always be looking for stuff that looks like other things. So I took the eye from an alligator that I had taken a photograph previously and superimposed it on that cypress knee, and
Pretty neat.
looked like an
Kind
alligator.
of ominous, isn't it?
And John was awarded the best creative photograph last year in last year's contest
With
for
this
this photograph.
photograph?
This was the most creative photograph.
Let's look at some more because there are some very now that's
Wow.
that's just awesome.
This is John Stokes also.
And there's another trail that goes further back in the park. It's the Egret Trail. And I was in a kayak along the edge of the Egret Trail. And those were giant swallowtails on the pickerel weed. And I was able to pretty much have my way with them because they were not interested in me.
Well, and again, it's perspective. You were in a kayak shooting this.
Certainly.
That was probably the only way to get that photograph is from that perspective.
It
correct?
would have been difficult to get down in the water with them, and so yes, I was on an eye level view with them, and I had a 55 to 200 lens at the time, so I was able to be within 5 feet of them, and I just followed them along the canal trail, taking photographs of them, and that was one that struck me, that the one on the left was pursuing the one on the right, and he just wouldn't give up, and I stayed with him for like 30 minutes until they got into an area where I could no
Wow.
longer follow.
So patience in order to get
Stick to
A lot
it.
of
that
patience.
picture.
And John's persistence paid off. That was the grand prize winning photograph in last year's contest.
Now I did say snail,
Yes.
and so here we have a snail.
This photograph was the best nature photo in last year's Alligator Lake photo contest. The photo was submitted by a student from Florida Gateway College, Taylor Ostendorf. She got the cash award of $50 and a certificate, and we've shown this photograph of hers all over. It tells a great tale. The shell is the empty shell of one of the exotic apple snails that have invaded Florida. You think that might be a bad thing, but it's empty and upside down, which means that limpkin has found it and eaten it. The limpkin population is more than 3 times greater than it was 40 years ago because these invasive apple snails.
Pardon my ignorance, but what is a limpkin?
A limpkin is a bird, a long-billed bird, and gee, I should have brought you a photo of one. I'll show you one.
I was thinking name of a rock band, Limpkin.
In the 60s, no.
Yeah. So and
that's
this
nice.
this is in Lake City. This is off Old Country Club Road here in Lake City.
Absolutely. This was the best recreation photo last year, received the award for that. Again, Georgia Schmitz submitted this photograph. And it's a great lake for kayaking, great lake for photography, great lake for fishing, and obviously a beautiful setting. This is the Central Canal.
And you can kayak on this lake. You can put your boat in. I don't. Is there a boat ramp for regular boats?
Yes.
So I mean, it's a great opportunity, and again, I think the photographers have really brought the lake and another great photograph. This is Rob because it's got your name on it.
Yep.
Now, how far away were you when you took this photograph?
I was extremely close.
Really?
And I think the weather was bad, and I think the bird was a little cool and wasn't, or maybe not feeling good or something, but he let me get, I mean, I was like within a couple of feet of him with a 200mm lens. I love this shot because the contrast between the gray and then the out of focus background, and the bird is just, you know, they got sparkle in the eye, you know, it's just, it just struck me. He let me take 20 pictures of him, you know.
Probably knew he was going to win a contest.
This
another
I
one of
took
yours?
Over at the lake near the hospital, and I sat there, and it was an unusual day. There was hundreds of birds there, and there were egrets and just all kind of ducks, and I probably spent close to an hour just shooting, and this one picture out of hundreds of pictures was the one that everything, look at the eye, look at the action, look at the color, the balance, it just, everything clicked. It's one of those shots like, you know when it's right, and you know it just has so much appeal, you know.
Wow.
This is actually from St. Mark's National Wildlife Refuge. It's a vermilion flycatcher. It's quite a rare bird for Florida. It's not rare in its normal territory out west, but most of them go south into Mexico and Central America in the wintertime. This individual, for the last 4 or 5 years, has been headed east and shown up in Florida. Posing with a mole cricket, it actually caught within 3 or 4 feet of my feet as I stood there and let me take his photo.
Those would be welcome on golf courses because golf courses hate mole crickets.
This is another rare bird for Florida. It's a Nashville warbler. One of their common behaviors is to hang upside down to feed on the underside of leaves. You can see it has an aphid in its bill and a colony of aphids on the underside of that water oak leaf. On the first morning of a killing frost this last fall, this rose struck me because it reminded me that, you know, that first heavy frost, it kills off the flower buds, the plants go into their winter dormancy, and it was at a time when I kind of felt like the first killing frost was hitting my life. And I was reminded that we humans, just as these plants, will once again blossom in beauty and in life.
Well, I appreciate you guys sharing your photography with us. And if you want more information on the Alligator Lake photo contest, you can log on to sites.google.com/site/ALSF photo contest. And you see that on the screen there. You can get more information on how to get your photograph in the contest. You got some prizes, monetary prizes?
Yeah, the grand prize winner will receive $100 minimum. Will be more if the number of entrants support more. There are 3 categories: nature, creative, and recreation, and each of those winners will receive $50 or more. And in addition to that, Four Rivers Audubon and Wild Birds Unlimited are sponsoring a prize for the best bird photo. I have not been told quite what they're going to give this year. Last year it was a pair of binoculars, $250 value. So it's a good idea to enter. There are prizes. There also are award of merit winners who will be announced.
And
deadline is March 1st.
Drone photography as well.
Yes, we got contacted about drone photography. We began today with some beautiful drone work. Yes, photographs taken from using a drone can be entered in the contest. All photographs must be taken at or above Alligator Lake.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for sharing with us today, and thank you for watching Perspective here on Florida Gateway College Television. Until next time, I'm Mike McKee. So long.